Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is book recommendations for people who are trying to get back into reading. These are all the books that got me back into reading. This is for people who have never read recreationally, or maybe you're trying to read for fun again. These are the books that you need to read, I'm telling you, because you're not gonna wake up one day and be like, let me read Charles Dickens. I mean, maybe you are, but that's just not the way it works for most of us. These are just tried and true, and I know that so many people started reading these books and that's what got them back into reading, and it's like an exercise. You need to start somewhere to be able to read these long, intense series or just like really in-depth books, and so these books are really good for getting you there. I know that a lot of people have different interests, so if you really don't know what to read, think about something that interests you. Maybe it's like video games or cars or something. There's a book out there that revolves around that and could be really, really interesting for you. I tried to pick a diverse bit of books that are like super easy to read and still like really engaging, so hopefully some of these will work for you. Let's just get started. So starting off with a bang, we have the books that got me back into reading a couple years ago, and that is Coho books. So I remember reading It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover 2 years ago. I hadn't read a book recreationally in years at that point, and this got me back into reading. It really, really did. I read it in one sitting. I thought it was the best book I've ever read. I gave it 5 stars. Yes, my tastes have evolved and I probably wouldn't rate these books 5 stars anymore, but I can't knock it because it got me back into reading. Definitely check trigger warning. But then I read Ugly Love and really loved it, and if you are a guy or maybe you're not into like traditional romances, Verity is her take on a thriller. I thought it was okay, but a lot of people love this book, and my favorite Colleen Hoover book is Heartbones. It's really good. So the reason why these books are all good and I recommend them is because none of them are that long. The chapters are really short. Her writing is so easy to digest and understand what's going on, and also there's always some sort of twist at the end of the story that's like, oh my gosh. So it's like that added element of like making you loving reading because it's so engaging, and she always keeps you on your toes and you never really know what's going on. So that's why Colleen Hoover highly, highly, highly recommend if you're getting into reading, and it's really good for getting a lot of books done and a lot of reading done in a short amount of time, because people fly through these books. I don't know what she puts in them, but they're really, really, really good. And so if you have never read a book or are getting into reading for the first time, you just have to give it a try because these books are so good. Okay, next we have One True Love by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think all of her books are so good, but this one is really good for beginners because it's not part of a series or anything like that. It's just this one standalone book, and the premise is very, very interesting. So it's about this girl named Emma, and her husband like 20 years ago was presumed dead. He went missing in a helicopter. Flash to the present, she is about to get married, but she gets a phone call from her husband that was presumed dead. He is actually alive. So as you can imagine, she is so confused because she has fully moved on, is about to get married, and now her husband that she thought was dead is now alive. So what is she going to do? I think it's a really good book. It's only about 300 pages, so it is a good length for beginners because you know what it's about going into it. It's not too hard to understand, and also the whole time you're like, oh my god, what is she gonna do? I love this book. Honestly, super great for beginners. The next book I have to recommend is Better Than Movies by Lynn Painter. Look at how gorgeous this cover is, first of all. Second of all, it is YA, which is young adult, so super easy to read because it's meant for ages 12 and up. I read this when I was like 20 or 21 and I still loved this book, okay? This book is a rom-com in a young adult book. That's literally what it is. It's super good. It's just like super young. Like it brought me back to being in middle school and like the awkwardness of just everything you do when you're in middle school. Every single chapter starts with a quote from a rom-com, so it's just super fun. And if you are a movie buff and you love rom-coms, you're just gonna love this book, I promise. Basically, this girl is trying to get the help of her neighbor so that she can get the attention of this guy that she likes in school, and it just so cute and just funny to read about, and I think that anybody would enjoy reading this book. It's super good for getting back into reading. It's super short, and I love owning this book, and I own a lot of other Lynn Painter books because they're just so cute. Okay, kind of on the opposite spectrum of Better Than the Movies, my next recommendation is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. She writes a lot of books that I would just not recommend for beginner readers, but I would recommend this one for a beginner reader because she gets right into the story. She wastes no time, and as someone that had read all of her other books before reading Yellowface, it was so much easier to understand than her other books. She was definitely writing for more contemporary readers for this one. In this book, we have two authors. We have a very successful one and one that's not very successful. They're hanging out. The successful one dies, and the non-successful one just steals her manuscript and publishes it as her own. So she basically just steals and plagiarizes her work, and all of these things start to happen, and she's trying to cover up the fact that she plagiarized and copied a book while she's becoming so successful off of somebody else's work. I think anybody can understand this. My dad listened to the audiobook of this and he really liked that, and he doesn't really read a ton. The language in this is really easy to understand. I think anybody can understand it, and I would really recommend this for anyone. I think once you read this, you're like thrown into the deep end of reading and you can read anything. And I think that if you're not totally into the romance or the fantasy or even like literary fiction, like you just want something that's going to be fresh, I would highly recommend this one. Next, we have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is a trilogy. Some people recommend to read Caraval before it. I don't think you need to. I mean, I didn't, and I'm completely fine. So this is fantasy romance, but it's more like a fairy tale. It's just a very whimsical book. This book follows a girl named Evangeline, and she wants to make a deal with the Prince of Hearts, so she goes to do that, and then all of these things start happening. I didn't love this book when I read it because I thought that it was really simplistic and almost too easy to read, and it is young adult. It just didn't hit for me, but the rest of the series was so good, and I think that if you are a beginner, if you think that you would love fantasy, this is really good to get into that. But it is so easy to understand. Like I said, super simplistic. You can read this in one sitting. Good for beginners. This book is super vibey too. There's not a ton of characters, but all of the characters seem super familiar, yet there's a new fresh take on them. So I would recommend this to beginners. If you want a super serious book but you don't know where to start because you don't want something that's like super complicated, I would recommend The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. Definitely check trigger warning. This is about a girl who experienced something very traumatic, and you start almost on the first chapter, and it's about her experiencing the aftermath of it and her just kind of analyzing what happened to her and why she did the actions that she did and why she did what she did. And she's also trying to fall in love, and it's just all of the feelings that come up when she tried to do that because of what happened to her in the past. This was so good. It starts super fast. I would recommend this for beginners. Again, it's about 300 pages. It is young adult, age 14 and up, so I would recommend this to a lot of different people. If you want something that's more serious and gets into the nitty-gritty, I would recommend this one. If you are looking for a long series to read and you want romance, I would recommend the Addicted and Calloway Sisters series. I read the whole thing on my phone. I do believe they are on Kindle Unlimited, but I only own Hot House Flower, which is like I think the second or the third book in the Calloway Sisters series, because I just loved it so much I just had to own it, so I bought it after I read it. But these are 10 books, so it's a really long series, and you have the Addicted series and the Calloway Sisters series, or you can read them together, which I believe that you should do. I didn't love the Addicted series so much, but I do love the Calloway Sisters series. I know people are diehard fans of these books, and I would recommend them. I don't love romance, but these have an added element of just situations and problems and just real life hardships that these characters are trying to deal with, and you become so attached to these characters as you read these books, because again, it is 10 books long, and I just think that the romances are so good, so sweet, and there's so many different couples to root for in this series, and I do just think it's good. It's very easy to read. It's contemporary romance, and I just love it. This is an adult romance and not young adult, and I obsess over it. I don't really think about books that much after I read them, but I read this in September and I still think about it every day. Like, literally, I'm so attached. Like, it's getting closer. I need to stop. Okay, the next book I have is a contemporary romance that I read a couple of years ago and I gave it 5 stars. It is In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle, I think you pronounce it. This is a romance with a magical element, kind of like the 7-Year Slip, but basically this girl has her life together. She's very type A. She's about to get married. She has a career. She has a dream about being in a relationship with this random guy, and she starts freaking out, and she knows that the dream happens in 5 years, and she's like, this is really weird. And throughout the series of the book, you see her go through a course of events that leads to her vision, and it was just so good. I hadn't read anything like that at the time, and I loved it. It's super short. It's like 200 and something pages. Super good. Very easy language again, and I think that any beginner would love this book. If you are a fan of Gossip Girl, reality TV show, like spoiled aristocrats, spoiled rich people, the Kardashians, I would recommend the Magnolia Park series. These covers are gorgeous. I know this series is controversial, but I don't care. It's just so good. You're basically reading about the lives of spoiled rich people in London, and it's just the way that they cannot keep a healthy relationship. And I just loved it. I just love these books so much. I think they're so good. You see a bunch of like text messages. They're talking like the way that regular people would talk. That's like the language in this book. And anybody can read it, and everybody should. I will never stop recommending these books. If you want a book that's gonna put you right in the middle of the action as soon as you start it and will really make you feel heightened emotions, and you just want to feel stressed out when you're reading a book, I recommend This Can Never Not Be Real by Sarah Milano. I've seen nobody talk about this book, and I bought this when I was in England in some like middle of nowhere town, so maybe that's why. But this is about 5 different teenagers who find themselves caught in a mass shooting. It was just crazy and terrible, and just so many emotions got brought up, but I just think that it is really good and deserves more attention, and I think that any beginner can read this book. This is one of the books that I read when I was first getting back into reading, and it was so good. Thrillers are always a good book to read because they're super fast, usually short chapters. Depending on what you read, the language can be really easy. I can make a whole video of good thrillers. One that I read when I was starting the journey was Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. This one is crazy. It's about a married couple who are having problems in their relationship, so the wife decides to rent a place in the middle of nowhere, and they go and weird things start happening, and it's just like crazy. So I love this book. The plot twist was crazy, and I just think that thrillers are really good. I know that they're not for everyone. I have to be in like a certain mood to read a thriller. This is a really good one to get you started. Alrighty, and last but not least, so funny that I'm recommending this, but it's the Harry Potter series. I don't know where the first book went. I have every single book and multiple copies of all of them. I just cannot find the first one, but this is the second one. It's so good. I've read the whole series like, what, 8 times. I feel like everybody has read this, and if you read it when you were little and you're kind of writing it off, just read it again. Like, it's so good. It's a classic. People love it for a reason. You could do something fun where you like read a book then watch the movie. You can really do a lot of fun things with this series to get you back into reading, and I don't even need to explain what it's about, but it's so good. I want to reread it again. I've been meaning to reread it for months, but of course I have so many things. I'm like, I need to read it. Alright, that is it for the video. I could probably have gone on and on with different books. I think that as long as you find something that you find a little bit interesting, it can make you a reader, but these are all the ones that I feel like are really safe bets. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Bye!